Hi, I'm Gavin Hodgson, fly fishing instructor and manager of Granger's Fishing Tackle here in South Kensington, London. We're going to talk you through some of the techniques and tips and help you get started in fishing. Okay, we're going to talk about how to put a fly line on a fly reel. There's a few knots, not many, and we'll talk you through it from start to finish. We'll start by putting the backing line onto the reel. Now the backing line is important for a number of reasons, but the main reason being it supports your fly line with a safety. So in other words, if you hook a big fish and the big fish runs, takes all your fly line, you've got backing line behind it, and hopefully you'll start seeing some backing going through the rings, but you've got plenty there so you land that fish, no problem. It also there, when your casting improves and you start aerializing the full fly line and shooting line, you've then got the backing to shoot with it. But the main reason is for the fish. So tying that to the spool, there's a very simple knot, and I'll not take the spool off the reel. Okay, so we've gone around the arbor of the reel, yeah? Now this is a large arbor reel, but it doesn't make a difference, the knots are the same. And now I'm going to do an arbor knot, which is a very simple knot. Pass that line through there and we create an overhand knot. We all know how to do an overhand knot. Now a slip knot, which is basically to tighten itself onto the spool. So over the main line, under the main line, under the other line, and back through that loop. And that's the configuration of the knot. So as you can see, we've created a knot around the main line, yeah? And the first knot we created acts as a stopper. So when we tighten things up and draw that in, eventually that knot hits the second knot we tied. And that tightens up against the spool, and that's the stopper. It doesn't slip too much, and it doesn't slide through. Once we trim that tag away, we don't have to trim it too short, then we're ready to wind the line on. So we want to get a friend to hold the backing spool on a pencil, and we want approximately 100 yards on this spool. So if you don't have a 100-yard spool and you're winding off bulk and you want to try and gauge this correctly, there's a handy little tip to gauge that. Now here's the fly line. If we want to gauge this, we have a large arbor reel. Now to gauge a large arbor reel, while we're winding backing on, press half the fly line in there. And that gives us an estimate of where it will come to when the reel's loaded. So we can see there, at the moment there's no backing, there's lots of room for backing. So when we wind backing, before we cut, we keep trying that line in there until it looks fairly full, and then we cut the backing, knot it, wind the line on, job done. So now we have the backing line on the reel, which is approximately 100 yards on there, loaded quite nicely. We've got to attach the fly line to the backing. The knot we use for that is a nail knot. We've got a lovely little nail knot tool which makes the job much easier. So I can show you that knot and join the two together. So to create a nail knot and join the backing to the fly line, what we need to do is use this lovely little gadget, the nail knot tool, which is simply a barrel to wrap around. Fly line going one direction, backing coming towards it from the opposite direction, and then cross them over and wrap back on itself over the tube, wrapping the fly line, the backing and the tube together. And what we're doing here is making close touching turns, back down the tube, about 6 turns, thereabouts, and then through the end of the tube, which then creates the knot. If we pass that through there, second time around, we pass that through there, push it in as far as it goes, and then pinch the knot with our other hand and pull the tube through. There's the fly line, the backing line pulled through. So that's the configuration of the knot. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to spread the knot out. If I spread the knot out, you can see all the turns that we've created. Now, the way to bunch this knot up correctly is not to pull too fast. Keep spreading it out while pulling at both ends. You can see I'm working both ends and pulling the knot. Always spread the knot out. And then what we end up with when we get closer is those turns get closer and closer to touching. And once they're touching, then that's knot pretty much created, apart from a little pull to tighten things up. And as we tighten things up, we create a nice, neat barrel, which is very strong. Cuts into the fly line a little both sides, which makes the knot very strong. And then we simply trim off the tag, very short, on both sides, on both the fly line and the backing line. And what we end up with is a nice, neat barrel. That barrel there is going to pass through your rings both directions and not cause any unnecessary bumps. And it's those bumps that when we get a real bulky knot and those pass through your rings that we lose the fish. So that should work very well. What we like to do in this situation is put a little drop of fishing glue on there just to smoothen those notches and also give us an extra safety measure of knot. So here we are, backing knot rigged. Pass the fly line to your friend with the pencil and start winding. Okay, so once the fly line's on the reel, which you can see loaded up there, that's about the correct clearance. We've got a little bit of clearance at the end. All we need to do before we go fishing is attach a loop to the end of the fly line. Now there are a number of ways of doing this, but the simple and very easy way that we like is putting on a braided loop, which is nothing more than a very simple loop attached to the end of your fly line. Now there are some braided loops better than others. We use Roman Moser, they're the best. By inserting the fly line into the braid, we've gone as far as we can go. Now all we need to do is slide that sleeve back. And by pinching and sliding that sleeve back, it's tight, but it goes all the way until it just covers the end of the loose ends of the braid. That's it, job done. That's going to hold. What a lot of people like to do, and we do too, is put a little drop of fishing glue right near the sleeve and let it run under. So there you go. Loop's on, job done, ready to go fishing for trout.